travelling at an altitude of 10 kilometres, that's just over 6 miles, when it was downed. The Ukrainian Interior Ministry said a missile was fired by a Buk system. This is a tracked vehicle that can fire missiles up to 14,000 metres in the air with a range of 45 kilometres. Both Russian and Ukrainian forces have these systems.
The SA-11 is a tank with 4 very large surface-to-air missiles on the back. It's also got an integrated and quite powerful phased array radar as a part of the sort of whole setup. And yet there have been unconfirmed sightings of SA-11s around the Donetsk area in the last couple of days, so it's most likely to have been the system used to shoot this down.
The Buk SA-11 has a powerful radar which would have been scanning 360 degrees for targets.
Once they've decided on tracking and engaging a target, the pressure is then on to engage that target as fast as possible and then relocate.
Even with that pressure, it would be difficult to mistake a fighter jet for a passenger plane. But military transports, which have been targeted recently, can appear similar.
These are radar-guided missiles, so it will have essentially gone up close to the main body of the aircraft and then detonated on proximity fuse or warhead, which will have perforated the fuselage, the fuel tanks, engines, caused enough damage to take down the aircraft. And of course, civilian airliners are not armoured in any way, unlike military vehicles.
The pilots, crew and passengers would have had no warning. But NATO satellites and reconnaissance planes have been watching the conflict area and will now be combing it for a telltale missile flash and radar signal to piece together what happened. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
We've been looking all day at this Buk anti-aircraft system, or anti-missile system as it is called out there. We do not know that this was what was used. What we're looking at here is simply the capability of the system, if in fact it could accomplish such a thing. If you look at the flight pattern, which we've been talking about so much here, Anderson, you see that it came right across the country, as we've discussed, wound up down here before it went down. Let me put it onto a more normal map so you can see a little bit more of what we're talking about. That puts the crash site down in this area, and this is Russia, all over here. All of the green out here, this is all Russia. So you're getting quite close to Russian territory, about 18 miles away from where the plane went down. That's within range. But also it could be within the area, because this is what we're talking about when we refer to the Buk system. It is highly mobile, operated by 4 people. It has 4 ready-to-launch missiles on top of it. It's quite fast. From the time that this thing is rolling to the time that it can stop and be ready to fire is 5 minutes or less. The radar acquisition, target acquisition system can find a target and fire a missile in about 22 seconds. So this thing can be moving very quickly, can fire fast, and can be gone fast. So no matter where this came from, if in fact it was a missile, the launcher could now be very, very far from where it all happened. Let's talk a little bit more about the missiles up on top there. There are many different configurations for the Buk, but if they're using the 9 M317 missiles, which are common, each one is about 16 feet long, each one weighs about 1,500 pounds, carries a 154-pound warhead. So that's high explosive, 154 pounds. That's extraordinary. And all it has to do is get close to the plane. It can't actually impact its target, but it could just get close to a plane if you use one of these, and then this blows up with tremendous force. And this is really important to note here. Look at the speed of this. 2,684 miles an hour. That's around 3 times the speed of sound. That is unbelievably fast. A missile streaking through the sky like that, when you compare it to a plane like this, which is flying along at maybe around, let's say, 600 miles an hour, you can see that not only could a missile like that be guided in, because it is guided the whole way to a plane like this, but it could come in so quickly, truly nobody on board, including the crew, might have any idea that it's coming. The truth is, if this is what happened, if this is the system, this plane could have been hit and nobody on board would have the slightest idea, Anderson, that it was headed their way. And we do know from that map we showed you earlier, it all is happening in a region over here. This has been that highly contested region where pro-Russian separatists have been at work. This is where you have your crash site somewhere in here. This is the Crimea down here. So it's right in the hot zone. And certainly these weapons are capable. One last note, Anderson, I want to throw in here. We talk about the fact the Russians would certainly have these systems. We know they have the Buk systems, and they could reach across the border. We speculate as to whether or not the separatists have such systems. But we do have to, in all fairness, note that Ukraine has been a very important partner with Russia for many, many years in developing missile systems. And despite some difficulties in the late 90s, their missile system is still pretty robust here. Their production, their technology, their knowledge. So the Ukrainians also would have such systems. It's not like they would be incapable of this. That's why we have to be so careful right now about deciding if it was a missile, and if so, who fired it.